internet governance definition. So I would like to know from, let us make it a little bit more interactive, like what is fake news? What are the challenges of internet governance? So I will begin with fake news. What is fake news? What do you understand by that? Any mic is here? Can you provide mic? Anybody wants to? Anyone? What is fake news?
A piece of news, which has distorted facts. Sir.
So,
fake news has no worth.
Yeah, a piece of info, we can't call it information, but it actually is a piece of news that has no worth. It's distorted facts.
Okay. Anyone else?
So it's a fake.
Yeah.
So it's a news, but it's totally fake. It has no worth, but it has some value that people will see to it. It is made something like that everybody wants to see it. Nobody simply discard it. Mm-hmm. They will once go through it and then they can decide, or sometimes they are not able to decide and circulate it as it is there.
Okay.
So I would just like to add upon to it the value part. Fake news, as said correctly, is distorted facts, but with malified intentions.
So I believe that it's a piece of information which is believed by one, followed by many. And when it comes to value, I believe that it is also about experiences that people have, and something which is related to their experiences, wherein they can understand that this can harm someone, or it can even give a positive reinforcement or a negative one. So I think that is why it's valuable.
Okay. So our next one is the internet shutdown. What is that? Have you heard this internet shutdown?
Yes, in the
All of it?
We'll go one by one.
One, yeah.
One by one. We'll go so that
Sample.
everyone gets a chance.
Yes.
We'll go one by one. We'll start from here. Yeah.
Internet shutdown.
It is a blanket ban imposed by the government on internet, which prevents people from accessing any service over the internet.
Is it good or bad?
It depends. Prevents freedom of speech and expression, but at the same time, governments often argue that it is necessary for security.
Yeah, next, anyone?
We'll come here. Anyone here? Want to speak? Anyone there?
Yes. Our foreign fellows here, have they experienced in their own country any shutdown?
So internet shutdown is basically when the globally all DNS and the origin source name servers, when they have done any maintenance period, or it is like to impose a global ban for a continent or a whole society. There is a news that 48 hours of maintenance is being done by ICANN.
No, that's a different thing. I'm not talking about that kind of shutdown. Anyone else?
So violating the digital rights, because internet is my fundamental right, and I don't want the internet to shut down. But it's quite happening almost every 1 or 2 months.
Yeah, is it a fundamental right?
So internet is my fundamental right, just like with the right to information, right to food, right to education.
Okay, Mr. Data?
Internet shutdown is nowadays practiced by government than anybody else. We see it, Rajasthan, where I come from, leading in this area from the whole world actually. Almost 20% time Rajasthan faced because of the riots and examinations. Even our government sees that if you need to do the exam of the selection of the police constable, they shut down the internet in the whole state because the copying of the papers do not happen. And this is strange. I have been advocating to shut down specific areas if required at all. But obviously we are against it. And I heard that Nikhil is coming here, who has been doing some work on this.
Yes.
Who is going to speak more about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our IDN. Have you heard IDN? What is IDN? Internationalized domain names. I will not ask Data. He will give a full 1 hour talk on that. So anybody else on IDN? Have you heard IDN? What are IDNs?
Yeah, yes.
Anybody else?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jay Paudyal, and I'm member of Neo Brahmi Generation Panel, which is working for IDN domain for India. IDN means domain name in your own script. Like, I think it will take 1 or 2 years to have domain names in your own script, like in Hindi, hamara.bharat, in Punjabi, in Bangla, in Gujarati. You can start booking those names also after 1 or 2 years, I guess. These are IDN names.
Okay.
The domain names in your own script, your own language.
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Sudhakar.
Yes.
I love to have idea. Since we have discussed these things in ICANN 59 also 60.
Okay.
This is very much difficult because ours is a multilingual. India is a multilingual. For that, you need to have idea. That's why.
He's saying he needs, I think for a multilingual internet, we need to have IDNs is a must. Good, thank you. Next is our multilateral versus multi-stakeholder aspects. What is that? Have you heard this multi-stakeholder word or multilateral? Some new fellow here?
Yeah, hi Kapil on this side. So when we talk about multi-stakeholder and multilateral approach, it means that taking, including each and every part of a community, people who belong to different, fraternity. So making them part of this decision-making process, whether they are from business, civil society, or government organizations. So, thanks.
What is multilateral?
So multilateral is, I need to understand.
Okay, good. Anyone? Yes.
Yeah, hi. I think so multilateral is basically when discussion happens between different governments. So governments are the only ones representing themselves or the countries. Multi-stakeholder is when you also include other organizations. So including many more stakeholders than just the governments.
What is good? What is better? Which one is do you prefer or?
So I think we'll learn over the next 3 days. But
anyway, we will explain that. Next is our AI, IoT or big data. Anyone?
Yeah, I'm Gaurav, and simply in my sense, AI is a definition of AI is reduce the gap between humans and the machine. This is the artificial intelligence. And next one is IoT, Internet of Things. And Internet of Things is the things will apply the Internet of all the things, communicate with by using some AI, some machine learning techniques. And the last one is big data. In my sense, big data will define as a 3V. The first one is volume, and the next one is velocity, and the last one is variety.
Thank you. So we will be discussing these in one of the sessions. AI. Yes.
Sir, artificial intelligence is giving human intelligence to the computers, and IoT is where people and processes will be connected with each other so that they can communicate with each other. Big data is like a huge data which needs large storage like petabytes. So that's it.
So we will be learning about these aspects, and then data protection. There are two mics. One mic can be distributed. Okay, it is here.
So data protection is all about encrypting the data, because encryption has become a norm. So protecting the data, protecting interests of the individuals and the groups.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes. Can you take this mic here?
Yes, yes.
It was here. That's not working. Now it's not here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll put here and then there.
Data protection is about this process of saving data from corruption on loose.
From?
Corruption on loose.
Yes, here. इनको दे दिए प्रतीक.
Yeah. Thanks. Data protection could be looked at in two different ways. One could be related to privacy. Other one could be related to what if you lose it. So we do have laws in place. For example, in US we have HIPAA, and then we have the Journal Data Protection Act as well. So it's all about that.
Okay. What is Bitcoin or blockchain? Have you any idea, people here?
Cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, blockchain is, it's a list of records, we call it. We keep it on a ledger. It contains a series of transactions about anything literally you want. And Bitcoin is one application that uses blockchain, and it's a cryptocurrency in short.
Anyone else?
So the main advantage of Bitcoin is that it does not need a single entity to control the flow of money. It is just from end user to end user, and it is a decentralized approach.
Okay.
The next is government is very much worried about this cryptocurrency. Indian government does
Yes, please, on the mic.
Indian government does not allow this to circulate in India. Indian government is very strict about cryptocurrency, and we have got finance minister's statement on that. It's not legal in India.
And what about blockchain?
I don't have much knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So what is data localization? Have you hearing this many times? Yeah, Dominic?
So data localization is primarily government's diktat or a set of law rules where a private company would need to store a copy of the data within the geographical location of the country.
Okay. Why it is needed, why it is not needed, or is it good or bad?
So that's debatable. In my personal opinion, it should happen because there's a lot of times when you have to investigate certain things, specifically in case of money laundering and some national security cases. So it's convenient, if I may say, if you have a copy of the data here, the investigation happens pretty well. If it's in Europe or US or some other part of the world, you have to follow with the law enforcement agencies there, and it leads to their own delays, whims and fancies. Sometimes you have to follow their regional law, which in the world of internet is not applicable to us. The data can go in whichever network node, so it's highly complicated. So data localization, in my opinion, is must, specifically with regards to financial transactions and some other sensitive information such as defense or strategic affairs.
Okay. So,
No, I'm just asking anyone else.
any other views other than localization of the data, globalization of the data? Okay. Digital economy. I think it is.
Sir, everything in economy, like the payments, everything will be like cashless. More and less it will be digitalized. Like even the grocery shops, the economy and the bills will be digitalized. Everything will be kind of digitalized. The school fees of children to the insurance payments, of everything, almost everything, train tickets, air tickets, everything, whatever you are doing will be digitalized.
Cyber stacking.
So cyber stalking is about like if you are
Anybody else will try? Cyber stalking? Girls?
Can I speak or? Can I speak?
Yes.
So cyber stalking is primarily just as in physical life, somebody stalks somebody else on the street or somewhere else. In the world of cyber, could be on social media, could be on emails or some other methodologies that is used. You stalk someone either for social benefits, financial benefits, or a lot of times college kids stalk their area of interest in the classroom or in the college.
Any ladies, please here?
Yeah.
So now cyber stalking has led to a new area called sextortion, which is a mixture of sexual behavior plus extortion. So a lot of people share photographs believing that great friends, but relationship doesn't last for perpetually. and then it's a matter of blackmailing the other person for financial benefits. And there are folks in India and abroad who have committed suicide because of sextortion.
Anyone else?
I feel that cyber stalking has an element of repetition, continuously, more than one time, going after somebody, either through their social media or through other means, so as to extort from them or for your own malicious reasons.
Now the point with cyber stalking is that there is no geographical boundary. When we talk about stalking here and there on the streets, there is always someone close to you who knows you or who doesn't know you but can see you. Cyber stalking can be from very fake profiles, right? And the person does not even know you, and it is just about how you post your pictures, how you post your information, and anyone can be a victim of that. Thank you.
Okay. Let's put on this topic.
So to her point, she just made a point that in physical life, the stalker can see you. In cyber stalking also, the person can see you if he has activated the victim's camera remotely. Hence, it's always recommended that you put a tape or something, a band-aid on the laptop camera or something. But there's one problem with that. Like for me, I've forgotten that there's a tape. So every time I have a Skype call, they say I see something red because I have used a red tape, and I'm trying to figure out technically what has gone wrong until I realize that I have fixed a tape on top of it. So you have to also remember that. Yeah.
There's also this type of thing you could use, which is a slider.
So that's for Mac Windows machine.
No, even on Windows.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
It's just a physical slider. It's a physical slider. Right?
As a matter of fact, one of the contest prizes we have is exactly this device.
Oh.
So we'll be distributing this, but not to everybody, only to the winners of the contest.
Okay. Next I'm coming to root servers. Yeah, you want to say?
These servers are also known as dot servers. Actually, they store the information about primary level domain servers like .edu, .org. So whenever we search domain name, IP address of a domain name, it will reach to the dot servers.
Yeah, there. And one there.
Hello all, I'm Ihita. So according to me, what I feel, so we all know the domain name system, and we have, so the domain name is nothing but your www.google.com. So you have something called a fully qualified domain name. After .com, the top level domain, you have a dot, that's the root. We don't usually put that. So the root servers are nothing but name servers, so they help you resolve your domain name to your IP addresses. And as far as I know, I think there are 13 root servers, and the supervision of these root servers is done by ICANN in the RSSAC, the Root Server Security Advisory Committee. So it looks after these root servers.
Okay, yeah.
May I do a friend? So very good answer, by the way. Being a little bit involved with DNS myself, 13 root servers. There are 13 letters, but in fact those letters are served by more than, I think, 400, 600 now. Yeah. So there is a trick so that these name servers, these root zone name servers, are distributed all over the globe, and so people often think that 13 root servers mean there are only 13 locations in which those root servers are, so that they give preferential treatment, and some people are far away from these things, but that is not the case. Most people on Earth are very close to a root server, and that's an important detail if you talk about governments, because most people think, oh, most of these things are in the US and in Europe, and Asia is lagging behind. Not the case. More than 600.
Thank you. Yeah, one more here, then we have to move to the next.
I would like to add some point. Basically, root servers are those servers which are responsible for the DNS backbone. It maintains the overall functionality in the globe across for the DNS resolution, and it serves as a backbone. And it is connected at a very high speed backbone connectivity. So it is distributed across the globe, as I said, geolocation. This question was also posted on Nixie page every Friday, which asks.
Okay. Right to privacy. Yes, here. I think everybody knows that.
So it is basically my right to have my public information, my private information, not going out in public domain without my consent. And I guess recently Supreme Court has also read right to privacy as one of the fundamental rights.
But what is
Privacy is my personal
what are
information.
the data which is private, which is not private?
Okay, so my details, my date of birth, my bank accounts, my passwords, everything is, anything related to my information data is private.
Yeah, we'll go with it. We'll go here.
So broadly, data right from your biological and medical records, your genealogy records, till the extent of what you speak in public life, you deem what is private. It's a private decision, but again there is the difference between sensitive and non-sensitive private information when you have anonymization that comes in. The important aspect of right to privacy is also in terms of whether you have the right to forget, the right to correct or rectify the records, and also in terms of cross-border or international transfer of data.
Okay, good.
So, in my opinion, there is nothing called as right to privacy now. The owners of your telecom service provider and your mobile, they know exactly where you are sitting right now with latitude and longitude. Most of us use Uber, Ola. We order food. How does they know that you are standing at X location? And like rightly mentioned by Govind sir, what is private and what is public? You are willingly giving that. If each one of us honestly read before we create an email ID, none of us will create an email ID. If you genuinely read those micro mini things, and I say, especially Windows user, click next, agreed. So you won't create it. So right to privacy is great, but a lot of people who are yapping about it these days don't know what is privacy or tech.
Well, thank you, Martin. I'm from Europe. And
where GDPR is there.
Where GDPR started, so we've been working on it for a while. And actually, as a private citizen, I'm very happy with it, because GDPR and privacy provides a stick to really move this forward. We already knew about privacy enhancing technologies and measures in the 90s, and we haven't adapted it in our thinking and in our business models. Now we will. So I'm very happy also with the Indian initiative, and it's really about any data relatable to individuals. In Europe it's very strict, like in India, it's a fundamental right. Unlike in, for instance, United States, where you can trade that right. It's an economic good in a way.
Yeah.
So yes, everything related to this, and the complication is that thanks to big data, algorithms, and in the future more and more artificial intelligence, in principle becomes possible to make movies of all our lives just from our data.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Astik Sinha. I'm probably from the other side of the fence. I work with the Indian Parliamentary IT Committee. For a public figure, the definition of privacy is very different. Because when he files his affidavit to contest an election, he's basically disclosing a lot of things, like his personal assets, name of his family members, age, sex, location, whether he owns cash, jewelry, his personal mobile number, his if he's a public figure, again, photographs are in public domain. So the definition of privacy depends on also your profession, if you're a public figure or you're a private citizen. And it's like the definition of terrorism, which the world cannot, come to a consensus on. Privacy is very different, and somewhere we need to define it in order to have data privacy, which is perhaps the next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Sina.
Hi. Apologies if I may sound too legal on this, but I think the Supreme Court has done a wonderful job to determine or to define what are the contours of the right to privacy. It's a very useful discussion, but the very fact that some companies have our data and we are not exactly sure how much they have it shouldn't be a factor for us to say that, okay, there's no right to privacy just because, an Uber knows more about me than I do. The test for determination is also whether you have a legitimate expectation of privacy. So while I'm booking an Uber cab, it obviously knows where I am. But when I'm not booking it, it should not know. So I have a legitimate expectation that it should not be knowing it. At the same time, that app should not be sharing this information with somebody else because I used it to book a cab and for nothing else. Till you have a right to privacy, those contours would not be defined. And yes, it's been misused, I'm sure. But because you have a right to privacy, you have the right to object to that. So I think it's very crucial to not give up saying that there is no right to privacy just because it's potentially capable of being misused. What is important is, like was rightly said, for public figures, the expectation of privacy would be different compared to somebody like me or compared to somebody who's sharing an information with Uber. So the standards may be different, but there is definitely right to privacy and there are well-defined standards for that, which we should not give up on.
Yeah, Mr. Data.
I have a very simple take on, I gave a presentation around that, with a contour around who owns my data and who owns the right on the data to publish it. So when I give it to Uber, I still own it. That's the relationship and that's the control we need to have so that it doesn't get shared by anybody else. Just imagine that a Pandit who goes to and a priest who goes to the temple and his Uber Eat meal where he ate non-veg gets published tomorrow to the website. Basically, then it's obviously a breach of privacy, and the control over that data should be mine because I have controlled that. So if you are in a public going for becoming a leader in the parliament or somewhere, then you are giving that right to the parliament that you can use my data and then publish it. The key here is, should lie in my control. What data which I am creating, whether on Uber, whether in Parliament, whether in Book My Show, anywhere, I own it, not Book My Show. And without my permission, that is not usable. When I go in a public service, they explicitly ask my data, which is to be published online, and then I am giving my consent. So I think this is a distinction on privacy from my side. Thank you.
I think from the security point of view, there is another story to be told. They need certain information, where you went, where you taken something from the security or the other angle. Then the whole definition of the privacy will be changing, and there has to be a balance. So yes.
Yeah, I'm Karika, and so I wanted to answer with regards to expectation, right? Like you said, when you book an Uber, you have an expectation that your latitude and longitude, basically wherever you are, is known. But what about IoT? When I purchase a device, I place the onus of my data being secured on the device, on the company I'm purchasing it from, right? And that's true even for the apps that I'm installing it. So for me, I presume that the company has the onus and it would use the data for what I'm consenting to. And even for emails, so for terms and conditions, which we usually do not read, what other choices do I have not to just take and agree to the terms and conditions? I honestly, at this level, I don't think I can live without Gmail. And then again, at the same time, there's an other side of the coin that, oh yeah, my data could then again be used for numerous other purposes than what I've initially consented to. So yeah, there's a lot of layers, I would say, with regards to expectation that you had mentioned.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diksha from Nepal. I absolutely agree what the gentleman said, and I also think that what happens when something is recognized as a right is that you are able to access a remedy for that. For example, in Nepal, when more than 35,000 calls were extracted by the investigators, we were actually able to file a writ against it. Now the investigators are only able to access the call details of the public only after taking consent from the district court. So I think that is how right to privacy or recognizing it as a right is important.
Okay, so
thank you very much. I come from another perspective. Every company who is serving us, they need our data, and that's for sure. If that's Facebook, if that's email, if that's companies who manufacture our tools, like mobiles and laptops and these things. Being an owner of a company, I need the survey of my consumers, that what kind of mobile phone they are using of my products. I have 4 or 5, so for that survey, I may go for some terms and conditions, which could give me some information and data from that consumer's point of view. For me, important thing is, I'm not much worried about what I share publicly. The thing is, we know an incident about the Facebook, that Facebook and Amazon sold out our all data to CIA and if something like that in America, and that's a very huge problem which occurred between Angela Merkel and Obama administration. So the thing is, if I'm giving my information or data to some vendor or some service provider, that's fine. But if that service provider or vendor is using my information without my consent, that's the thing that we need to be worried about. And for me, right to privacy is that thing. Of course, Facebook is made to share photos. Of course, on Facebook, I'll share my thoughts and all those things. But the thing is, well, the photos that I'm hiding, whether Facebook is sharing it that ahead or not. So that's the main concern, I think.
Okay. So there is a full session on this data protection, Indian data protection law, which is there on the Thursday and the Monday at 2:30. So I think another set of questions you can keep for that, or answers or comments. Next is the data governance. What were the data governance? Any idea about data governance? You want to say anything?
Data governance, that who will be governing our data, like our online data, whether the government has a right or some agency has a right or some private agency has a right about data governance. And particularly, I would like to say that when we are giving our data to Apple's iPhone and to the smartphones, like give them the iris whenever we unlock the phone, whenever we touch the phone, they take our biometrics. So whenever if we are doing that, then what is the problem in giving data to the government? So if we are doing that, so who will govern the data will be the next question.
How it is different from internet governance?
What is if internet governance is absolutely in the area of the government, that how government wants to go about it and how the agencies want that government should work with them.
Yeah.
I'm Krishna. I work with a medical equipment company from Netherlands. So data governance in the sense is in terms of how data is stored, how data is processed and managed, in terms of the policy that is defined for private players, in terms of companies, for policies for the government to access the same data, and again, as an individual to access public data sets. So the overall policy in terms of processing, storing, and transfer of data.
Okay.
I would request everyone, please introduce yourself before making any comments.
Okay. So, anyone else? What are these points which I mentioned just now? Data localization, root servers, internet shutdown, and fake news, IDNs, multi-stakeholderism. So what are these points? Why I mentioned these before the internet governance definitions and other thing was that to give a feel of the issues or the policies which are there in the air, everywhere, what are the things which needs to be tackled through internet governance. These all points come under the one way or the other in the internet governance, whether it is our data protection, privacy, IDNs, shutdowns. So there, it is not just the government which needs to deal with it, it is the other stakeholders also, which we will be seeing in the multiple presentations. Now I will bring to you the perspective of internet and other economies in the digital space. Yeah, this is over. So this global economy, there is the digital economy, there is the IoT economy, there is the AI economy, data economy, data governance we were listening, and internet economy. So you see the circle around the each, because IoT itself is going to have a big, economy in some time. Artificial intelligence is going to be another kind of flavor or economy which is going to be. There is a global economy underneath. These different kinds of economy are subsets of that, and depends when one of them will take over many of these bigger than the economies of the world. So my agenda, I don't know, which is half an hour time here, and of course Deepak Mashi is also there.
I need to go after some time.
So you come?
Whatever.
Okay. So I will just give you little historical background of the internet. When it started in 1960s, Bob Kahn and Windsor, when they started the TCP/IP protocols and all that, I think most of these things are known to most of the professionals here. Outline of the internet ecosystem is the different parts of this, ecosystem, in naming and addressing, regional and global policy development, open standards, shared global services and operations, users. So these are the different stakeholders of the internet, larger internet ecosystem, which I am not going into this will be already available. Coming to the internet infrastructure, we have the physical layer, the logical layer, and the content layer. This is the way the internet works, which everybody knows, and beneath that is the security layer. So this is the definition of the internet governance, which came from the Tunis and earlier phases of the Internet World Summit on Information Society. Like, it is the coordination of the many aspects, including technical standards, policies, infrastructure, that make the internet work and determine how it is used by the governments, the private sector, civil society, and involving all the stakeholders. So this is the multi-stakeholderism versus the multilateralism, which I mentioned in the earlier one. And here are the 7 clusters of the internet governance issues, like in the infrastructure side, domain, the Internet of Things, then the cybersecurity side, cluster, then we have the freedom of expression, privacy, data protection, women's rights, online jurisdiction is the next cluster, e-commerce is the another cluster, then access, digital divide, capacity development, and the content policy, cultural diversity, multilingualism. These are the 7 clusters where the issues of the internet governance have been, separated out. Here you can see the diagram from the Diplo Foundation, which gives you an idea of how the cybersecurity, the human rights at the one side, and the business and economy, what are the interplay of these things. And here is a big building, which is more complicated, looks like, but these are the layer by layer structure of the issues of the internet governance, which is built over the years, maybe from 2000, where the human rights, the socio-cultural, economic development, cybersecurity, then the global organizations like ICANN, ITU, WIPO, and all are there. So ecosystem, again I talked about naming and addressing resources, which is the domain names by ICANN, and then the IP addresses like LACNIC, APNIC, ARIN, and all organizations. Here is the structure of the ICANN, which gives you what are the various GNSO, the generic names, supporting organization, Internet Engineering Task Force, root servers, security and stability aspects, internet users, at-large advisory committee. So these are the various components or various wings of the ICANN, under which ICANN works from the bottom-up policy approach. Here the standards body, which is Internet Society, W3C, IEEE, ITU, IAB, IETF. Many of the people are aware now what is IETF kind of thing. And these are the global discussion forums like regional IGF, like API IGF, the main IGF, which is there, BICIS forum, then ITU forums, International Telecommunication Union, and these are the capacity building aspects by the regional organizations like OECD, Internet Society, ICANN, Diplo Foundation, and so many others. So countries' initiatives I want to bring to you, like National Internet Exchange of India, which was established in 2003 to bring the ISPs together in the country. And then the .in registry was set up and then refurbished in 2004. Then NIR was an IP address allocation. These are all within the inSIG in 2012. Implementation of internationalized domain names in 2014. And then the Digital India program, which is there now going on. And these are the, there is a separate session on IDN implementation in all the languages of the country, like .bharat in several of these scripts and languages, which will have not there. Data will be there on tomorrow. Tomorrow's good full session will be there. And these are some landmark, processes which went into the Internet governance process, a World Summit on Information Society, to Tunis Summit and Geneva Summit, and how the IGF evolved after that. Then the BICIS process of genesis of IIG in 2005. Then the enhanced cooperation aspects. Then the deliberations are there on the Internet governance, intense debate on subject of Internet governance, which is much lesser than compared to the earlier ones, where the intense debate was there on the root server aspect and the multi-stakeholder versus multilateral aspect. Then the India strategy, Internet governance in India, was basically evolved from 2005 to 2015, 10 years time, and where we concluded to be more multi-stakeholderism, or rather than a multilateral kind of thing, and playing a dominant role in the regional and international level. This is the internet ecosystem in the country. Like, we have a large number of, more than 1 billion mobiles and 500 million internet users, e-governance initiative, B2C transactions, role of 3G and 4G Digital India program, and all those kind of things. And the trends and growth of the internet. This is important in the sense that most of the expansion of the users will come from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Regional languages, content, and culture will be the dominating factor for the, in general for the internet. Technological innovations will continue to move towards mobile and social media governance. Expansion and users of technological innovation will give rise to increase in scope for malicious activities in cyberspace. So
you need to switch that.
So these are the challenges of the internet governance. Like, there are national challenges, regulatory barriers, and the internet governance work for ITF kind of thing. 1 minute, yes. And there are global research and development, IG innovations and investments, participation in internet-related technical and policy forums, representation in national and international IG organizations. So the whole issue is how this kind of school of internet governance to bring perspective to each one of you, to say how do you participate in the global forums, make your presence felt, and participate in their policy development processes, technical processes and policy processes in APSIG, ICANN and other kind of thing. So this is the last slide before I give it to Deepak Maheshwari. So where internet governance cornerstones are we have to see how we go more and more into the details of these particular processes in each of these global organizations of internet, what internet governance infrastructure is there, who are the major components, major organizations, and how we participate in these through their ongoing or face-to-face meetings which have happened every year. So with this, I would like to end here. Any questions or anything? Yeah.
Said that in the coming trends, culture will dominate. Could you please specify on that?
There is a session on IGN in culture here, maybe on Monday. But culture means the kind of the culture associated with languages also. So even other day, I think we were discussing how the various tribal culture or their languages are disappearing because it is not on the internet. So we have to see how this internet does not divide culturally or the language-wise or any script-wise. So they have to be inclusive development of these culture also, with the language and their culture, their those kind of things.
Okay, so if the languages are included, but
if they're not educated about it, then
So that's the challenge about it, that they are not educated about this particular language. So that is where in the script, the domain names and other issues of the internet language technology should be brought into this gambit. The language or the script of that particular tribe or particular culture, which is not there right now in the internet.
okay.
Data want to answer? The language or anything?
Sir, I had one question on last slide, initiatives. How can complete shift from IPv4 to IPv6 is possible in a country like India and remote villages and towns where still people are using 2G, not even 3G properly?
Yeah, it's a task and challenge both in terms of the telecommunication companies which they have to do it, because IPv4 address is already exhausted, the 4 billion or so which were there earlier. So we have to see that how the companies like Jio is reaching out to various villages and other parts of the countries. So it is moving through IPv6. Similarly, the companies which are already having on IPv4 or 2G, 3G, they are on the migration side. So how to bring that kind of thing, and where the companies will look into the more market through more IPv6 deployment, that will be the challenge and the both kind of thing.
Sir, BBNL Bharat Broadband Network Limited, which is providing fiber connectivity to remote villages, gram panchayats, it is also completely on IP4 still.
Okay. Symantec, you might be knowing, at least Norton, I guess. That's also from Symantec paper. And before that, I used to work in a startup called MasterCard. Before that, another startup called Microsoft. Before that, another startup called SIFI, which was India's first private ISP. And before that, in HCL, which was an IT startup at that time with a turnover of all of 120 crores. That's when I joined the company. Also have some other hats or caps or whatever you call it. So I happen to be one of the co-founders of this company called NIXI, National Internet Exchange of India. He's also the Secretary of ISP Association of India for a couple of years. We also have Amitabh here, who used to be president, and Amitabh was also CEO of NIXI for some time. Also been a member of Internet Society, and Dr. Govind mentioned about IEEE. Right now I'm the global chair of IEEE Internet Initiative, and also have been involved in some of the other activities of IETF, etc. So let me just address some of the issues, and then I'll come quickly to these a little bit about internet governance history in India specifically. So one on IPv4, please look at the Honorable Minister's statement of 26 May 2004, the day he took over as the Minister of Communications and IT, Mr. Dayanidhi Maran at that point of time. He had said at that point of time, I'm just mentioning that one of the 10 goals was that India will migrate fully to IPv6 in 2006. Whether it happened or not is a different issue. Okay? He also had mentioned at that point of time that we won't go to 3G, we'll go directly from 2G to 4G. Okay? But these are some of the statements which have been given. The second thing is, even today, it's not just about IPv4 or IPv6 per se in terms of infrastructure, it's mostly to do with applications. I think that's where the main challenges are. Somebody had mentioned earlier about 3 V's of big data, but apart from those 3 V's of variety, velocity and volume, we should also look at another V which is very important, is called veracity. What is the veracity of the data? What is the truthfulness of that data? You mentioned about privacy in IoT, I remember. So, we did the study a few years back, and we just bought 50 odd off-the-shelf devices which are IoT, Fitbits, and those type of things. And about 20% of them had no privacy policy. Many of them had a default password, and it was something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or PASSWORD, or that type of simple password, which, by the way, you could not even change in most cases. So not just that there was a default password like this, you could not even change it. So and there's a reason. The reason is that most of the devices that are coming in the IoT space are not coming from the IT companies. And the companies that, let's say somebody who's making a thermostat or who's making some other product, they're just adding the internet connectivity without bothering or being concerned about many of these things. And that's why, as Martin had mentioned about GDPR, or for that matter even the India's draft data protection law, there's a bill, there's a mention about privacy by design there. Okay. Now, one of the important things is that while people do talk a lot about internet governance in India, internet in India, etc., it's also important for us to recognize what's been the India's contribution to internet governance itself. Okay. So, for example, some of you may be aware of this, the WSIS 2003 and WSIS 2005. Okay, the World Summit on Information Society 2003 and followed by the 2005. Now, in between, at the end of the 2003 session in Geneva, one question came up, yes, that we need to look at internet governance, what should be done. But the other question, even before that, was, what is internet governance itself about? And then, the United Secretary General at that point of time, Kofi Annan, he appointed one of the UN diplomats as the chair of the working group on internet governance. And there was about 40 people as member of WGIG, working group on internet governance. So they worked between 2003 Geneva meeting and the Tunis meeting in 2005, and they then come up with whatever document which was in turn discussed at 2005. Now the interesting thing is, the chairman of that particular group was Mr. Nitin Desai, a former chief economic advisor of India, and at that point of time working in the UN, who lives not more than 3 kilometers from this place. Probably radially it will be less than 2 kilometers from this place. Yeah. And then we have also another gentleman, Mr. Ramraj, who was the CEO of SIFI. He was also a member of WGIG. So what I'm saying is that there has been contribution from India right in the beginning, at that point of time itself also. Apart from that, later what happened, in 2005, the then Minister, Mr. Arun Shourie, he made a statement at Tunis. And of course, in 2015, as Dr. Govind just mentioned, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad did mention India's position at the IGF, and there he again said at ICANN meeting in Buenos Aires, right? At Buenos Aires about 3 years back, and he did mention about that India supports the multi-stakeholder approach to internet governance. So this is something I just wanted to mention in terms of internet in India. Now, the internet access in India actually started to public at large on 15th of August 1995, which was our, of course, Independence Day, by then company called BSNL, Videsh Sanchar Nigam Limited, and currently it is known as Tata Communications Limited after privatization in 2002. This started services in 6 metros in the country. The tariffs were as low as 5,000 rupees and as high as 15,000 rupees, depending on how many hours, 500 hours, different packets, etc. on dial-up. However, internet access actually had been started a few years before that, but not to public at large. So this was started by 2 organizations. One was called Education and Research Network, ERNET, which is an organization under the Ministry of Electronics and IT. So they had started this project about connecting 5 IITs plus ISC, Indian Institute of Science Bangalore, and the original 5 IITs, to some universities in the US. And I still remember way back in 1991, I actually sold equipment to that particular project in Indian Institute of Science to test the quality of the lease line. And this lease line was all of 64 kbps lease line between India and US, which is what Indian Institute of Science was getting connected, I think either to CMU or to MIT at that point of time. Then the other organization that had already started internet services in India at that point of time was Software Technology Park of India. Again, a government organization, but they were offering internet access only to software companies, to nobody else, for export purposes. For the public, it started only on 15th August 1995. Now, the 7th city in the country happened to be Lucknow, of all the places. Okay, so it was not a metro. It is not yet a metro in the country, but Lucknow. And there was a reason. There was a political reason for it. Okay, because then communications minister came from that particular area. So people showed him that okay, this is what internet is. So many people around the world. That time only about 50 million users in 1996 can see you. So politicians said, okay, fine. Is it available in my hometown? No, it was not. So anyway, that service started. On 15 January 1998, the Government of India started and came up with an internet policy for private companies. And within less than 24 hours, I filed a petition against that particular policy in TRAI, which is the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. At that time, it was a co-legislation body representing, not in my personal capacity, by the way, representing certain companies, including the company where I was working, including the company where Amitabh was working, and a few others. On 17th of February 1998, the TRAI gave a judgment that this particular policy is not on. And however, then we worked on certain things. And on 6 November 98, we got an internet policy which more or less stays till date the same policy. So people like Ajay Data and many others came as ISPs further on after that policy. On 12th of November, on 12th of November, first service in the country started. So 6 November, the policy started, and 12th November, one company, SIFI, got license. And then on 22nd November that year itself, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who was both the Prime Minister as well as the Minister of Communications at that time, he became the first customer in a way of a private internet company way back in Hyderabad of SIFI at that time. And then many companies came. So we had hundreds of companies. And a lot of this traffic was actually going through VSNL as far as international traffic was concerned, which was okay because they were the only ones having international bandwidth at that point of time. And this bandwidth was available through two modes. So they had some satellites, but also some fiber. So they had fiber in Mumbai and Kochi at that point of time. Now we being in the private sector, we said, okay, the same fiber which is coming to Kochi is also coming to, let's say, in Cairo in Egypt and in Hong Kong and in Singapore, but there the rates are very, very low. Here the rates are very high. Why is it so? So we raised some of those questions. And then finally in 2000, the government came up with a policy on 13th of August 2000 that private companies could also establish a submarine cable landing stations. And so Bharti was the first company. After that, Bharti Aquanet, one of their ISP companies, which of course now is all part of the same company, but at that point of time it was a joint venture between Bharti and Singtel. So they established between Chennai and Singapore, the cable became operational 1.5 years later. And then of course many others came. The other thing that happened was that many of the private companies also set up satellite gateways using foreign satellites. So that was, by the way, the only case where private companies in India could negotiate directly with foreign satellite companies for this type of connectivity. The VSAT companies are not yet allowed till date. Of course, the broadcasting is a separate thing because broadcasting is like from one to many. Now in 1998 when the policy came, the license, if you see the clause 1.14 in the schedule C of the ISP license, it says verbatim, services or service means internet service, all types of internet access / content services except telephony on the internet. Now what was telephony on the internet was not defined. So we still wanted to offer internet telephony as well. Of course that time the rates were very high for international tariffs otherwise, and even for STD calls, let's say Delhi to Mumbai, it used to cost quite a lot, and on the internet of course it would be much cheaper. Finally in 2001 November, TRA came up with a consultation paper, and then in 16 February 2002 they made recommendations on internet telephony, which by the way happens till date. Out of the hundreds of recommendations, this is the only recommendation so far, the only recommendation of TRI which was put up by the government on the public domain, that okay, whether we should accept it or not. They got lots of years, like we did this humming exercise sometime back here. So they got of course a lot of years at that time in 2002, and then on 1st April 2002, internet telephony in India got opened. However, there was a skew in that, the way it opened. The way it was allowed was that you could use an IP device in India, so let's say a PC in India, you could connect it to internet and you could either connect to another PC in India or abroad, which was IP to IP, or from India you could dial a number outside India, phone number, but not any phone number in India, whether you start that call from outside or from inside, because that was to protect the international telecoms, which is the VSNL's monopoly at that point of time. Of course, from 1st April 2002, we also had the competition in the international long distance. So we had Bharti and then Reliance, and later even BSNL also offering us ILDO. Now way back in 1998, on 15 January when the license came, it had certain problems, and that's why we opposed it. One of the problems was we could not establish the last mile. Another problem was we could not set up international gateways. But more than all of these things, there was another one which was financial, that okay, you will pay so much license fee, etc. But the biggest problem was what all services you could offer on the internet. And this particular license on 15 January 1998 had some very interesting and peculiar language in terms of what all services you could offer. Any of you have read Archie comics? Okay. Can you name some characters from Archie?
Veronica.
And of course Archie, right?
Yeah, Archie, of course.
So by the way, Archie and Veronica both were names of some of the search engines in 90s.
Okay? And this particular license in 1998 mentioned that these services that you could offer on the internet are www, you could offer internet protocol call services, transport protocol services, EDI, etc. But also Archie and Veronica by name, they were mentioned, and Gopher. Okay? And for any other things, just outside some 7 or 8 services, for any other thing, you had to go back to the government and take the permission. And that was one of the major reasons that we opposed this policy. And finally the government came up with the policy where the only negative covenant was telephony on the internet. And this I think is very important for us to realize, because even at that point of time, we did not know what all will come, what type of services will come on the internet. But one thing we did realize, that there are going to be multiple services, new type of applications, etc., which we cannot even imagine. So let's go back to the government and see what is the pain point, and just address that particular pain point and leave everything else open. Okay? On 6th of August 1999, the government also came up with something, somebody mentioned about encryption. So on 6th of August 1999, government said you can't use encryption more than 40 bit. And if you want to use more than 40 bit, you'll have to take the permission with us and deposit the key pair with the government. Now that seems like, if I'm putting a very strong lock at my home, I need to deposit a duplicate key of that to the local police station. It almost feels like that. Anyway, till date, 19 years, 2 months and a few days, there is no such process in the country where you can actually deposit a key pair. They are yet to notify it. Okay? On the other hand, we have regulations from RBI as well as from SEBI which says that you have to use minimum 128-bit encryption. So it is like this, that you are driving on a highway and you see 2 different signage. One says, don't drive more than 40 miles an hour. Another says, don't drive less than 128 miles an hour. And by the way, you've got to comply with both. And the fact is, you can comply with both. Can you? You can. Don't drive. Okay. But even that option is being taken away now, because the government is saying that for many services now will be available only in online model. So for many services, like for including not just benefit services, etc., but let's say to file an income tax return, etc., you have to do it only that way. So this is what happened at that point of time.
How much is this?
Then of course, as Dr. Govind mentioned, in 2003 we established the NICSI. Then in 2004 the .in domain names was also transferred to NICSI. Earlier there were only 6,000 domain names under .in, which were given by a government organization called NCST at that time. Now it is part of CDAP, and they started. Then of course in 2006 we had one very interesting development. In 2006 the government said,
The government said this.
okay, thank you. Okay, yeah. So then we had a license fee of and you know what was the license fee in 1998 when the internet services started on 6th of August 1998, 6th November 1998. The license fee was this. What is this coin?
A rupee.
1 rupee. 1 rupee per annum. I'm not joking. 1 rupee per annum for 15 years, and even for first 5 years, even that was waived off. I don't know why, but somehow it was waived off. Even for the first 5 years, even this was not charged. Okay. So till 5th of November 2003, not even 1 rupee was paid. But this is something which happened now. How and why it came to be that the government, some people at least in the government, saw a value of internet beyond just, let's say, www and some entertainment value and other things at that point of time, or beyond email. Second thing which happened was that there were a lot of people in the industry who came together to address these issues. And the third thing was that we also had, I'll say, judiciary and the regulators that played a very important role in evolving these things. And this is how we sort of came around doing certain things on the internet. I mean, if people are more interested, you can look at, you can just search for 2 decades of internet and mobile in India with my name. You can see a lot over there and some of the other places. But increasingly what happened, way back in 1998, so Dr. Govind did mention about internet shutdown. Now, internet shutdown is typically a geographical activity that you shut down the internet to all the users in a particular area. So that's one type of internet censoring. The other type of internet censoring is called blocking. So the first blocking exercise that happened in this country was in 1998 beginning. Okay? And this happened to be a VoIP website, an internet telephony website which was blocked. And that website, how it got blocked was that BSNL, they were the only service provider for internet at that point of time, so they blocked the website. And then a gentleman in Delhi, he filed a petition in the Delhi High Court, and then Delhi High Court granted an injunction because he said that I want to understand the technology behind it. If I'm making a VoIP call at that point of time, which was not allowed, it might be a problem. But I just want to understand the technology, and you can't block my access to that. And the government, the court actually did intervene. However, starting from 99 onwards till date, we have multiple cases of hundreds or probably even thousands, I'm not so sure now, but at least hundreds of URLs being blocked from time to time. And once that blockage happens, these are typically permanent. So internet shutdowns are more temporary, that okay, for 48 hours, for 2 days, 7 days, etc. This blocking is typically like forever. I'm not aware where any single case the government issued a blocking order and then they said, okay, unblock it. I'm not aware of that. The second thing which happened very interestingly from 1st of January 2006 was that under the Unified Access Service License, Internet service earlier was a separate license and this was included as part of that license. So Internet and broadband. And there was no restriction of you cannot connect to local telephone network, okay, which was still the case in the ISDN. So from 1st of January 2006, and this is something that I had mentioned in 2006, and to some extent it holds true, unfortunately, even today. And to some extent I'm saying, of course, thanks to Jio and a few others, it's gone away. That India is the only country in the world, and this is something that I had mentioned 12 years back. India is the only country in the world where unrestricted internet telephony is legally permitted, but not legally available. That was the position in 2006. It continued more or less till 2016, before Jio came in. So that's another thing, that at times things may be legally permitted under certain licenses, but then none of those providers to whom it is permitted actually come forward to offer it. So that's the other aspect. And the last thing that I want to close is that increasingly we are seeing concerns around security, privacy, etc. So we have the Information Technology Act, which was passed in the Parliament on 17th of May 2000. It got the President assent on 9th of June that year and then became effective on 17th of October that year. So 4 days from now, IT Act will actually be a major because it will turn 18 in the country. And then 2008 we had amendments to that legislation. Then we had rules in 2009, 11 and continued till date. Some of the rules have come even as recently as some time back. One very interesting thing that happened was both from the government and some of the other people kept on saying that in India we have sufficient legislative framework for data protection and for privacy under the IT Act, and we don't need any separate legislation. However, last year on 24th of August, when the Supreme Court 9-judge bench said that constitutional right is there as a fundamental right for privacy, after that, of course, just before that itself, the government had formed this committee on 31st of July. Then they came up with the white paper on 27th November. They asked for comments, and on 27th of July this year, they came up with the draft data protection legislation. So now there's an agreement and there's a felt need that yes, we do need a data protection legislation. On the security side, we do have certain guidelines and rules, but the current scenario is, and this I'm talking of some data not actually from the company that I work or some of the other places, but this data I'm talking is from the government of India itself. Okay, so their parliament replies to questions. So 22,207 websites were hacked last year, including 207 government websites, and 493 of these websites were used for malware propagation. Last year we also had more than 53,000 cases of cyber incidents that were reported to CERT, and you'll have Mr. S.S. Sharma here speaking later, I think tomorrow. So you can ask questions around CERT from them. We also have National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center. But ultimately, let's understand this. Technology, so whether it's something being developed through ISOC or let's say IETF, IEEE, many other places, ITU, etc. Technology is local, but technology is global, but policy often tends to be local or regional. And that's where the real tension comes. So internet, we talk about globalization, internationalization, etc. But then we also keep on looking at things like data localization and that type of aspect. So when we are looking at this whole scenario, so there's not just about security and there's not just about privacy, we also have something to do with convenience. So security, privacy and convenience, I think we need to have a triangle around these things, and that's how we should look at a better balance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deepak Maheshwari and Dr. Govind. Since this session is very interactive, we do not have time for questions. So any questions could be asked the speaker during the lunch break. No time for questions right now.
I have one thing to do. I've got some publications from my home, and I thought I'll give it to some people who made some interesting questions or comments earlier. If that's okay.
So we will be handing, if you can hand it over to us, we'll take care of the distribution.
Sure.
So Sudha, please, please collect those. Yes, what is
Just
it?
a procedural clarification. Since Deepak Maheshwari is leaving now, how do we...
Can we have
No, I couldn't help it. I mean, I'm already 1 hour late. That's all.
So anyway, we don't have time to discuss this now, so we'll get back to you on this. So on behalf of all the organizers, I'm pleased to request Dr. Govind to give away this memento to Maheshwari. Thank you very much.
Okay guys, no thanks. So I think